pregnant wife found hidden cameras, then realized the millionaire had been recording her for weeks. There are moments in life that shift our reality so profoundly we can never go back to who we were before. This story begins at just such a moment, when a routine day took a sinister turn and a pregnant woman discovered the seemingly impossible: her own husband, a charming millionaire, had been invading her privacy for weeks. The hidden cameras she unearthed were more than just tiny pieces of equipment. They were symbols of a betrayal that ran terrifyingly deep. In an instant, a mother-to-be secure world turned upside down. As secrets unraveled, the stakes soared, and the truth became more shocking than anyone could imagine. A spiral staircase, a vaulted ceiling, the gentle hum of central air, white marble floors that reflected the mid-afternoon sun. These were the first impressions anyone had when stepping into Martin Kingsley's palatial home. If they looked closer, they might notice an array of pricey art pieces, artifacts from his globe-trotting endeavors, and an entire wall devoted to vintage wines. Martin was never shy about highlighting his wealth. Quite the opposite, he thrived on showcasing it. His wife, Danielle, however, had a far more understated presence. She found beauty in subtlety, preferring a quiet afternoon with a good book and a cup of chamomile tea over the lavish parties Martin often hosted. She was slender, with bright, curious eyes that often had a dreamy, contemplative quality to them. Now that she was pregnant, Danielle found herself even more introspective. Her growing belly added a gentle curve to her otherwise lean frame, and she frequently rested a hand upon it as though to protect her unborn child from the swirl of extravagance that surrounded them. Outsiders saw a flawless world, a testament to a millionaire's success, and assumed Danielle was the luckiest woman alive. Who wouldn't feel blessed to be married to a wealthy, charming man who provided a life of comfort and security? Friends applauded her stroke of fortune, and acquaintances approached her with envy, imagining the carefree days she must surely enjoy. Yet the truth, as is often the case, lay behind closed doors that concealed secrets, tensions, and vulnerabilities. Danielle was in her first trimester, brimming with anticipation and hope for the future, but there was a growing unease in her heart. The day she first sensed something was off, she had just returned from her regular prenatal checkup. The doctor's reassurance that all was well should have lifted her spirits. Instead, she came home to find Martin uncharacteristically quiet. Usually, he greeted her with a quick kiss and a question about how the appointment went. On that particular afternoon, he simply nodded when she told him the baby was healthy and retreated into his study without a word. At first, Danielle chalked it up to stress from business deals. Martin was a man perpetually juggling investments, philanthropic dinners, and complicated acquisitions. She tried to be understanding. Everyone had their moments of moodiness or distraction. Yet in the subsequent days, she noticed him lurking in areas of the house he rarely bothered to frequent. The basement workshop, the cramped laundry room, the upstairs hallway closet. It was almost as if he was planting something or searching for something. Every time she asked if he was okay, he waved her away with an absent-minded smile, claiming he just needed to take stock of a few items. Her instincts prickled. She remembered how, shortly after they moved in, Martin had a fleeting obsession with upgrading their home security system. He installed a state-of-the-art Nest camera at the front door, floodlight cameras in the backyard, and motion sensors in each of the main living spaces. Danielle assumed it was a phase, and that once Martin felt satisfied, he would forget all about it. But recently, it seemed like that interest had reignited, and not just in a typical protective way. There was an edge to it, a secrecy she couldn't pinpoint. Danielle began double-checking random spots in the house. Whenever she was alone, she would open closets, poke around the corners of door frames, and run her palms along the smooth interior of drawers, hoping to find anything out of place. She discovered nothing at first, but her anxiety steadily grew. She tried telling herself she was being paranoid. Hormones, she rationalized, had a way of heightening emotions. Perhaps the stress of impending motherhood was making her see shadows where there were none. Still, one evening, she overheard Martin on the phone. His voice was subdued, urgent, and it certainly wasn't a business call about stocks or property developments. Through the slightly ajar door to his study, she caught a sentence that sent a chill down her spine. "The living room feed has a blind spot. We need to fix that." She froze. Martin never talked about feeds unless it related to security cameras outside. So why was he concerned about a feed in their living room? Her heart thudded in her chest as she backed away from the study door, careful not to make a sound. That night, Danielle lay awake in bed, listening to Martin's even breathing. The man who slept next to her, the father of her unborn child, was rapidly becoming someone she barely recognized. An invisible barrier seemed to have formed between them, and she could no longer ignore the alarm bells clanging in her mind. Days went by. Danielle kept her observations and suspicions to herself, battling the urge to confront Martin outright. The shift in his behavior had created a tension that weighted every conversation. She noticed him fiddling with devices in his pockets, stepping away to make phone calls, and surreptitiously checking corners of rooms as though searching for vantage points. Something was definitely going on. The discovery happened on a quiet Friday morning. Martin had left early for a supposed business meeting. Danielle was pacing through the living room, preoccupied by the thought of ordering some new items for the nursery, when she spotted a glint near the base of the bookshelf. She knelt and peered closely. Her eyes widened. It was a small, almost imperceptible camera lens, nestled discreetly amidst the spines of books. For a moment, she simply stared, her mind unable to process. Then her breath came in shallow gasps. She reached out, trembling. The camera was slightly warm to the touch, confirming it was active. Alarm shot through her. Someone had been recording. She flipped it over, searching for a brand name, and saw a familiar label, Arlo. It was the same brand Martin used for the front door camera system. Adrenaline fueled her as she began to search the house with new determination. The best place to start was the rooms Martin had been so inexplicably visiting. The basement, the laundry room, the upstairs closet. It took nearly an hour, but in that time she uncovered not one, not two, but half a dozen more hidden cameras scattered throughout the house. They were tucked behind vases, mounted behind lampshades, and even placed at vantage points in the bedroom. Each tiny camera sent a jolt of horror through her. Had she been recorded in her private moments, changing, bathing, even weeping when pregnancy hormones overwhelmed her? By the time she was done, Danielle was trembling from head to toe. The truth was undeniable. Martin had set them up. Her own husband had been watching her in secret, capturing her every move for weeks, maybe even longer. She felt an acute mix of betrayal, anger, and heartbreak. How could he do this to her? That evening, Danielle mustered the courage to confront Martin. She waited until he returned from his meeting, which she now doubted was strictly about business. She stood in the foyer, arms crossed over her pregnant belly, the hidden cameras piled on a nearby table for him to see. The moment Martin stepped inside, she could almost taste the tension in the air. "What is this?" she demanded, motioning to the cameras. Her voice shook, but it held a fierce resolve. His face turned ashen. For a fraction of a second, Martin looked like a child caught stealing candy. Then he composed himself, smoothing his hair as he set his briefcase on the floor. "Danielle, calm down. I can explain." She cut him off. "Explain what? That you've been spying on me? That you planted cameras all over the house, without my knowledge?" Her voice cracked with a torrent of emotion. "I'm your wife. I'm pregnant with your child. How could you do this to me?" Martin's jaw tightened. "You don't understand. This isn't about you. It's about our safety. You know I've been receiving threats, right, from rivals in business. I just wanted to protect you. Protect us. But she didn't believe him. There was a hollowness in his tone, an insincerity that felt all too convenient. If that's true, why hide them from me? Why not tell me you were worried about intruders? Instead, you've been sneaking around, recording me in private moments like some creep. Don't talk to me like that, Martin hissed. He moved toward her, face twisted. You have no idea what I'm dealing with out there. You think all this money, all this power, comes without consequences. I did this for us. No, Danielle whispered, stepping back. You did this for yourself. It has nothing to do with me, and you've been lying about everything. He opened his mouth to argue, but something in her eyes must have warned him off. Perhaps he realized the depth of his transgression. In that tense moment, Danielle felt the vastness of their home pressing down, suffocating her. She wrapped her arms around her belly protectively. I'm leaving, Martin, she said in a quiet, steely voice. At least for a little while. I can't be here right now. Martin's face flickered with panic. Wait, Danielle. Just give me a chance to. But she was already marching up the stairs to pack a bag, ignoring the echo of his pleas behind her. Fleeing to a hotel felt like the only option. Danielle drove to the Hilton in the next town over, a place where she could clear her mind without the risk of running into Martin's associates. Once safely ensconced in a nondescript room, she sank onto the bed. For the first time since she'd found the cameras, she allowed herself the release of tears. She sobbed, face buried in the pillows, overcome by a sense of betrayal so thick it was suffocating. The baby she carried deserved better than a father who spied on his family. Her phone buzzed continuously. Martin called, texted, left voicemails she didn't pick up. In the midst of that emotional storm, she decided to call her longtime friend, Lily. She needed a friendly voice, someone who could help her pass the swirling confusion. Lily answered on the second ring, her voice brimming with concern. Danielle recounted everything, from the suspicious behavior to the horrifying discovery of the hidden cameras. Lily's shock was palpable. That's not normal, Danielle, Lily said. He didn't just cross a boundary, he obliterated it. You need to stay safe. Do you want me to come get you? Danielle clenched her phone. No, I'm okay for now. I just need to figure out what to do next. I'm pregnant, Lily. This complicates everything. I can't just vanish without considering the consequences. Lily sighed, and Danielle could hear the empathy in her voice. Well, I'm here, no matter what you decide. Just remember, you deserve better than this. That simple statement, you deserve better, echoed in Danielle's mind, forcing her to confront a question she had been skirting for months. Did Martin truly care about her, or was she just another piece of property to him, something to be controlled? In the stark light of morning, Danielle decided she needed more information about Martin's dealings. He'd always been somewhat mysterious about the sources of his wealth. Sure, he had a massive inheritance, but that alone didn't explain his constant references to rivals and threats. Could there be something darker at play? She recalled a box of old photos and documents Martin kept locked in his study. Once, during a spring cleaning session, she'd stumbled upon it. He'd been furious when he caught her trying to pry it open. She never did find out what it contained, and he never brought it up again. Now, a creeping suspicion told her whatever secrets lay within that box might explain his bizarre behavior. Stepping outside, Danielle stared at the road. Part of her wanted to march back home, break into that study, and uncover the truth. But after last night's confrontation, she wasn't sure if Martin would let her near anything. She decided to wait, to see if an opportunity presented itself. Meanwhile, she'd speak with a lawyer, just in case. At Lily's urging, Danielle set up a consultation with an old family friend, Mark Stewart, a seasoned attorney known for his discretion. She told him the situation in broad strokes. Her husband had installed hidden cameras, violating her privacy. She was pregnant. She was frightened. Mark's brow furrowed throughout her story. When she finished, he leaned forward. Danielle, this is serious, not just from a moral standpoint, but a legal one. Depending on the jurisdiction, secretly recording someone in private spaces can be a felony. You need to think about your safety and the baby's. She nodded. I know. I just don't understand why he did it. He claims it's for our security, but why not tell me? Why put cameras in the bedroom? That doesn't track with the protection excuse. Mark laced his fingers. Are there any other red flags about Martin's activities? Could he be involved in something illegal? Money laundering, perhaps? Or anything that would justify him going to extreme measures? Danielle hesitated, recalling the hushed phone calls and the references to rivals. She shrugged helplessly. I honestly don't know. He's always had business deals, sometimes in foreign countries, but I never pressed him for details. Maybe I should have. Mark nodded grimly. For your peace of mind, you need to find out. And in the meantime, we can take steps to protect you legally, like a restraining order, if necessary. The idea of a restraining order felt surreal to Danielle. Just a month ago, she and Martin were picking out baby names. Now she was discussing legal measures to keep him away. She left Mark's office with a sense of surreal dread, but also a glimmer of resolve. Martin was no longer just the man she loved. He was a threat to her autonomy, someone who might be wrapped up in dangerous affairs. Against Mark's advice to keep her distance, Danielle decided to return to the house one afternoon while Martin was out. She needed her prenatal vitamins and some personal belongings. More than that, she felt compelled to face the physical space where she had been recorded. She arrived, heart-pounding, and entered using her key, half expecting to find Martin waiting. But the house was silent. Stepping into the foyer, she noticed how her own footsteps echoed ominously. She tried not to think about how many cameras might still be running. She had removed the ones she'd found, but what if there were more? A paranoid voice inside told her to keep quiet, not to say anything that Martin's devices could record. First, she went to the bedroom, where her clothes and vitamins were. The space felt invasive now. She remembered the hidden camera near the mirror, capturing her in her most vulnerable states. She shivered and stuffed items into a suitcase as quickly as possible. Next, a compulsion tugged at her to check the locked box in Martin's study. Perhaps she could glean something about his motives, or at least arm herself with the truth. She found the study's door unlocked for once. The richly panelled walls and leather-bound books gave the room a veneer of old-world sophistication. In the center stood Martin's imposing desk. She saw the box on a shelf behind it, an antique lock sealing its contents. Danielle rummaged through Martin's drawers until she found a set of small keys. Most didn't fit. Finally, one clicked. Heart thudding, she lifted the lid. Inside were photos, documents, and a small black notebook. The pictures depicted Martin in various parts of the world: offices, fancy galas, remote construction sites. Some pictures featured men in suits, men with stern faces and dangerous eyes. She flipped one over and saw a scrawled note, "Deal in Shanghai. Not to be disclosed." The next photo read, "Meeting with ARW Solutions. High stakes." Another had a reference to threat from Mendez Group. Her anxiety spiked. She had never heard Martin talk about these individuals. She dug deeper and found a letter with a letterhead from a Swiss bank, referencing large wire transfers. It seemed Martin was funneling money to different accounts around the world. It wasn't necessarily illegal, but it was definitely suspicious. Then she noticed something else in the small black notebook, dates and times meticulously recorded, with details about conversations and transactions. Some entries mentioned hush money and evidence. A chill ran down her spine. One entry stood out in particular: secure personal environment, acquire top-grade surveillance. Danielle must not know. Her heart dropped. This was no random attempt at protection. Martin had specifically planned to spy on her. Why? Fear roiled in her stomach. Did he suspect she might inadvertently leak something about his shady dealings? Her mind whirled with questions as she closed the box. She placed the items back the way she found them, though she pocketed a few pages of the notebook for evidence, just in case. With her pulse hammering, Danielle hurried to the kitchen to get water. She needed to breathe, to think, but the moment she turned the tap, she heard footsteps approaching. Martin's voice echoed from the foyer. "Danielle, is that you?" She froze. He was home early. Panic surged, but she resolved to stay calm. Maybe she could feign normalcy, gather her suitcase, and leave. She slowly emerged from the kitchen, water glass in hand. Martin stood near the door, tie loose around his neck, an odd mix of relief and anger clouding his eyes. "Danielle," he sighed, stepping toward her. "Thank God. Why did you come back without telling me?" She forced herself to meet his gaze. "I needed my things. And my prenatal vitamins. I didn't think I owed you an explanation." He attempted a gentle smile, but it tremored with tension. "I want to make this right. I know you're angry about the cameras, but you have to trust me. It was for our own good." "Save it, Martin," she snapped, surprising even herself with her intensity. "Stop lying. I've seen enough to know you're not just worried about some nameless threat." Martin's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" She took a shaky breath. "I mean your hush money, your shady deals, the references to meeting with dangerous people overseas. The cameras were never about protection. You're hiding something bigger. And you were watching me to make sure I didn't find out." A flicker of panic crossed his face, quickly replaced by defiance. "You went through my study, my private property." His voice darkened. "That's a violation of my trust." She almost laughed at the irony. "You're lecturing me about trust after installing hidden cameras in my bedroom. In the laundry room? Martin, you've lost any moral high ground you ever had." Rage flared in his eyes. His voice shook with barely controlled temper. "You don't understand the stakes here. My business empire, our lifestyle, it's built on a delicate web of partnerships. One misstep, one leak, and everything collapses." She found her courage. "That doesn't justify violating my privacy or involving me in illegal activities without my knowledge. I'm pregnant, Martin. I won't let you endanger our child." Something broke in him then. He advanced, eyes cold. Danielle stepped back. For a moment she thought he might grab her, but his fists clenched at his sides. "You don't know what you're doing," he hissed, the menace in his tone unmistakable. "Don't push me." Fear stoked her anger. She lifted her chin. "Or what? You'll record me again? You'll threaten me? I'm done, Martin. I'm leaving for good." Martin swallowed hard, his gaze flicking to her belly. She could see the war of emotions in his expression: fear, anger, regret. Yet he said nothing more. Danielle brushed past him and marched upstairs to grab her suitcase. Leaving the mansion felt like tearing away a part of her own life, but Danielle recognized the necessity. She drove off, the driveway disappearing in her rearview mirror, uncertain if she'd ever feel safe in that house again. Every nerve in her body hummed, a testament to the adrenaline coursing through her. She dialed Lily. This time, Lily insisted Danielle come stay with her. Danielle finally agreed. By the time she arrived at Lily's small but cozy suburban home, her eyes stung with exhaustion. Lily helped her inside and offered a warm hug that seemed to untangle some of the knots in Danielle's chest. "Thank you for letting me stay," Danielle murmured, dropping onto the couch. She cradled her belly, a habit she had developed for comfort. Lily sat beside her. "Of course. Stay as long as you need. Have you heard from him again?" Danielle shook her head. "I turned my phone off for the drive over. I'm sure there are a million missed calls. He's not going to let this go easily." Lily's gentle hand closed over hers. "We'll figure it out, one step at a time." And so, for the first time in her pregnancy, Danielle felt the faint stirrings of independence. Yes, she was frightened. Yes, she was hurt, but she was no longer powerless. She had friends, a good attorney, and evidence that Martin had gone too far. If he thought he could continue controlling her, he was in for a surprise. Days turned into a week. Danielle settled into Lily's guest room, ignoring Martin's countless attempts to reach her. Part of her yearned to return his calls, to unearth an apology or explanation that might quell her pain. But each time she pictured those hidden cameras, her anger blazed anew, stifling any inclination to reconcile. During this time, Mark, her attorney, pored over the documents she'd taken from Martin's study. As the puzzle pieces fit together, an unsettling picture formed. Martin's fortune was entangled in borderline criminal investments, some of which skirted the law with suspicious skill. More troubling were references to Martin possibly blackmailing or threatening business partners to keep certain deals afloat. It dawned on Danielle that she might never truly have known the man she married. Her heart clenched at the thought. She'd once believed Martin's philanthropic endeavors, like charitable donations to children's hospitals, were evidence of a benevolent spirit. Yet now she saw them as potential covers for laundering money or buying goodwill in high circles. A conversation with Mark confirmed her worst fears. Martin is in deep, and these hidden cameras might be part of a larger pattern of controlling everyone around him. While Danielle grappled with her new reality, an unexpected ally contacted her, Paige Lawson, Martin's ex-personal assistant. Paige had parted ways with Martin a year ago under unclear circumstances. She reached out via email with a simple note, "I heard what happened. I believe you. If you need to talk, I have information." Despite her trepidation, Danielle agreed to meet Paige at a small cafe near Lily's neighborhood. She arrived early, scanning the room with nervous eyes. When Paige walked in, Danielle was struck by her poised, professional air, softened by a note of empathy in her gaze. "I am sorry about what you're going through," Paige said, settling into a chair. She clasped her hands around a steaming mug of coffee. "Martin can be unpredictable. That's why I left." Danielle leaned forward. "Did you know he was installing cameras?" Paige sighed, nodding. "He's been obsessed with surveillance for a while. Early on, he asked me to research the best hidden camera systems, but he told me it was for office security. I had no idea he planned to use it at home, but knowing Martin, I'm not surprised. Why didn't you warn me?" A regretful expression flickered across Paige's face. "It wasn't my place, or so I thought at the time. Plus, Martin is intimidating. He threatened to sue me if I ever disclosed any details about his business. By the time I realized how toxic everything was, I just wanted out." Danielle nodded slowly, understanding the fear that Martin instilled in those around him. "Is there anything else you can tell me?" Paige lowered her voice, glancing around. "He's been building a dossier on you." Danielle medical records, financial statements, personal correspondences. "I discovered it while I was organizing files on his laptop. He might be preparing to discredit you if you ever tried to speak out against him." A chill ran through Danielle. So that was Martin's game. He was collecting ammunition in case she turned on him. The hidden cameras were just the tip of the iceberg. "Thank you for telling me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Paige reached across the table and gently squeezed Danielle's hand. "I wish I could have done more sooner, but I am here now. If you need a witness or someone to back you up, I'll do it." Danielle left the cafe feeling a complex swirl of emotions, gratitude for Paige's solidarity, but also a starker realization of Martin's capacity for manipulation and control. As the days wore on, Martin's attempts to contact Danielle became more frantic. He left her voicemails that swung wildly between pleas for forgiveness and veiled threats about taking legal action if she didn't return home. Late one night, Lily woke Danielle with worry in her eyes. "He's here," Lily whispered, peeking through the curtains. Sure enough, Martin's sleek black car idled out front, headlights piercing the darkness. Danielle's heart pounded. "I won't talk to him. Can we call the police?" Lily nodded, phone already in hand. By the time a patrol car arrived, Martin had driven off, but the incident rattled Danielle's sense of security. It was a stark reminder that she wasn't dealing with some misguided, penitent husband. She was facing a man who had the resources and ruthlessness to get what he wanted. With Mark's guidance, Danielle began gathering evidence texts, emails, records of suspicious bank transfers that connected the dots in Martin's empire. She also documented the hidden cameras meticulously. Once Mark had compiled enough proof, he suggested a meeting with law enforcement. Danielle hesitated, knowing this step could escalate tensions with Martin, but Lillian Page convinced her it was necessary. If Martin's activities were indeed illegal, the authorities needed to be involved, especially considering the threat he posed to Danielle and her unborn child. So, on a clear morning, Danielle found herself in a small conference room at the local police station. Across the table sat Detective Alicia Meadows, a stern but fair-looking woman with a calm demeanor. Mark, Lily, and Paige accompanied Danielle, each offering insights. Detective Meadows listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. By the end of the meeting, she had a thick file of evidence. "It's still preliminary," Detective Meadows cautioned, "but we have enough to open an investigation. Miss Kingsley, I understand this is your husband, and you're expecting a child together. These cases can be emotionally fraught, but if he's indeed involved in criminal activities, we need to act." Danielle nodded, tears burning at the corners of her eyes. "I just want to be safe, and I want my baby safe." The detective assured her they'd keep her updated. As Danielle left, a wave of relief mingled with anxiety. She had taken a huge step, effectively drawing a line in the sand. She might have triggered a storm she could never fully predict or control, yet there was no turning back now. Word seemed to travel fast. Only 2 days after she met with law enforcement, Martin's lawyer contacted Danielle, demanding that she return to the marital home. The letter was dripping with legal threats, accusing her of abandoning the property and absconding with essential documents. She showed the letter to Mark, who merely shrugged. "He's trying to intimidate you, don't let him." But the intimidation wasn't limited to legal letters. Strange cars started appearing near Lily's house at odd hours. Danielle received anonymous calls that ended in silence. Once, she could swear she saw Martin's silhouette lurking at the end of the street. Fear gnawed at her, especially during the nights when every creak of the house made her heart jolt. Nevertheless, she pressed on, refusing to let Martin's tactics drive her into hiding. She discussed a restraining order with Mark, but they both knew it could be tricky to enforce, given Martin's influence. Mark advised moving to a safer location, possibly out of state. Yet Danielle felt a stubborn need to hold her ground. She was tired of being the one to run. In the midst of this chaos, Danielle's prenatal care remained a top priority. She continued attending appointments, ensuring the baby was healthy. The doctors marveled at how well she seemed to be handling her stress, though she often cried in private afterward. Each scan of her growing child offered a brief respite from her troubles, a reminder of the new life she was fighting to protect. One afternoon, while waiting in the OB/GYN's office, she felt a series of flutters in her belly quickening, the first real sensations of her baby moving. Tears sprang to her eyes, not from sorrow, but from an overwhelming sense of awe. This was the life that kept her grounded. She vowed then and there never to let Martin's darkness overshadow the purity of this child's future. Around the same time, Detective Meadows informed Mark that the police needed more concrete evidence to bring a strong case against Martin. Suspicion alone wouldn't cut it with a man of his resources. They needed to catch him red-handed or uncover a paper trail so damning that no lawyer could spin it otherwise. Lily proposed a bold plan. What if we lure Martin into revealing something on tape? He's used cameras on Danielle, maybe we can turn that against him. Initially, Danielle was hesitant, not wanting to sink to Martin's level, but the more she thought about it, the more sense it made. If Martin was so consumed by the idea of controlling narratives, maybe he would incriminate himself while attempting to manipulate Danielle back into his web. With Mark's support, Danielle decided to meet Martin in a public place, wearing a wire provided by the detective. The goal was to get him to admit, or at least strongly imply, illegal activity and the installation of hidden cameras without her consent. It was risky. Martin might see through the ruse or become violent, but she was desperate, and this might be their best chance. They chose a busy cafe near the courthouse for the meeting. Danielle took a seat at a small table, her heart hammering as the microphone nestled under her blouse felt suddenly conspicuous. She sipped water, eyes flicking nervously to the entrance. Lily and Mark waited in an unmarked car outside, ready to intervene if something went wrong. Detective Meadows stationed herself at a discreet vantage point inside, a plainclothes officer disguised as a patron. When Martin arrived, he exuded the same confident aura that had once captivated Danielle. He slid into the chair across from her, forced a smile. "You look beautiful," he said softly, his gaze briefly resting on her baby bump. She swallowed, conjuring the composure she needed. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. We need to talk about everything, especially the cameras." Martin's expression tightened for a fraction of a second, then he plastered on a smile. "Let's not air dirty laundry here. Why don't we go somewhere more private?" Danielle's pulse spiked. She forced a sweet, fragile tone. "I'd rather stay here if that's all right. Please, Martin, help me understand why you did it. You said it was about keeping me safe, but we both know there's more to it." He studied her, suspicion flitting through his eyes. "I told you, there are people after me, after us. I needed to ensure no one came near you or the house without me knowing. But the cameras in the bedroom, the ones hidden in the laundry room, that doesn't protect me from outside threats, does it?" She probed gently, hoping he'd slip up. He shifted uncomfortably. "Look, sometimes I make deals that step on people's toes. There are men out there who'd do anything for leverage against me." "If they got to you," Danielle cut him off, voice trembling with feigned vulnerability. "So you spied on me, recorded me at my most vulnerable moments. Did you trust me so little?" Martin exhaled sharply, frustration rolling off him. "I'm not proud of it, but I had no choice. Things were spiraling. I had to be sure you weren't coerced by anyone else, or working with them, even unknowingly. That small admission might be enough to prove he knowingly recorded her. Yet Detective Meadows wanted more. Danielle pressed on. "You're doing more than stepping on toes, Martin. Your ex-assistant Paige told me about hush money, blackmail, offshore accounts. How far did you think you could go before it all caught up to you?" At the mention of Paige, a flicker of anger darkened Martin's face. "Paige is disloyal. She's trying to sink me because she wants money. Don't believe everything she says. And what about me, Martin? Why keep such close tabs on your pregnant wife if you trust me?" The muscle in his jaw twitched. "I needed to ensure you didn't accidentally expose anything. The men I'm dealing with, they don't play games. They threatened to kill me if I didn't comply, to harm my family if I failed. I couldn't risk it." There it was, a confession that he was involved with dangerous men, that he was controlling Danielle to keep her silent. Danielle's pulse pounded. She had enough. She glanced at Martin's hands, which drummed anxiously on the table. For a moment, pity mingled with her rage. Was he as trapped as she was, or was this just another manipulation? "You installed the cameras to watch me, record me, without my knowledge," she said, trying to prompt a clearer admission. He hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Yes, I did, okay? I did it." Danielle's breath hitched, a swirl of triumph and heartbreak. She'd gotten what she needed. She glanced toward the window, where Lily and Mark were likely listening through the transmitter. The detective, seated 2 tables away, nodded almost imperceptibly. It was done. Martin noticed the direction of Danielle's gaze. Suspicion flared in his eyes. You're not wearing a wire, are you? Danielle forced a shaky laugh. Don't be ridiculous. But it was too late. Martin recognized the faint bulge of the microphone beneath her blouse, or saw the subtle shift in Detective Meadows' posture. He shot up from his seat, face contorted with rage. You set me up? Before Danielle could react, Martin lunged forward, fingers digging into her wrist. Fear shot through her, and she cried out in pain. At once, Detective Meadows intervened, stepping between them and flashing her badge. Martin Kingsley, let her go, she ordered. Martin's eyes blazed, but he released Danielle's arm. Two other officers materialized, guiding him away from the table. Shock overtook Danielle. She cradled her wrist, tears blurring her vision. She could hear Martin protesting, claiming entrapment, calling the situation a misunderstanding. But the detective's calm voice instructed the other officers to take him into custody for questioning, citing assault and possible violations of privacy laws. Danielle sank back into her chair, stunned by the suddenness of it all. She hadn't wanted it to come to this exact confrontation. She'd hoped for a calmer, more discreet takedown. Yet as she watched Martin being led away in handcuffs, a tidal wave of relief washed over her. She could breathe again. Martin's arrest sent shockwaves through their social circles. For years, he'd presented himself as a philanthropic millionaire, an esteemed figure at charity galas and exclusive clubs. Now rumors swirled about hidden cameras, shady deals, and the meltdown at the cafe. Many acquaintances distanced themselves from the scandal, while a few longtime friends called Danielle, apologizing for not believing her sooner. Meanwhile, Detective Meadows' team delved into Martin's finances and discovered enough inconsistencies to escalate the case to federal investigators. The cameras Danielle found, combined with Martin's recorded admission, formed the bedrock of a case for illegal surveillance. Separate financial crimes might also be charged, pending further investigation. Though Martin's high-powered lawyers tried to secure his immediate release, the judge set strict conditions, including an order to stay away from Danielle. The air around Danielle felt lighter, as though a looming storm cloud had finally shifted, but she knew the process was just beginning. Court battles, testimonies, and depositions lay ahead. With Martin behind bars awaiting a hearing, Danielle returned to Lily's house. She found that, for the first time in weeks, she slept soundly. Each morning, she woke up feeling the reassuring thump of her baby's movements, a subtle reminder that life was carrying on, and so must she. Lily noticed Danielle's change in demeanor. You seem calmer, more determined, she said one afternoon as they sipped tea in the living room. Danielle nodded, hugging a pillow close. For so long, I felt trapped in Martin's world. Even when I suspected something was wrong, I didn't see a way out. Now, it's as if I finally have permission to fight back, like I'm no longer living under his shadow. Lily smiled. You were always stronger than you realized. Now, that strength can shine through, yet the wheels of justice turn slowly. Even from behind bars, Martin's influence cast a long shadow. His attorneys filed motions to dismiss the illegal surveillance charges, claiming Danielle consented to the cameras. They argued it was a mutual decision to enhance security. Detectives had to produce clear evidence contradicting that claim, relying heavily on the day Danielle discovered the cameras and confronted him. Simultaneously, one of Martin's business partners, a man named Joseph Mendez, came forward with new allegations, revealing Martin had double-crossed him in an offshore property development. Mendez claimed Martin orchestrated a scheme to siphon profits and launder money through a fake charity. As investigators peeled back layers of Martin's dealings, more unscrupulous activities bubbled to the surface. Despite these revelations, Martin didn't crumble easily. His high-priced legal team countered every accusation with stalling tactics. Depositions were rescheduled, motions for protective orders were filed, and the case dragged on in a labyrinth of paperwork. Danielle grew weary of it all, longing for a resolution. Mark reassured her that building a solid case often took time, especially when dealing with a defendant as financially fortified as Martin. Meanwhile, Danielle's pregnancy advanced into the third trimester. Each ultrasound depicted a thriving baby, offering hope amidst the turmoil. She tried to focus on self-care, gentle yoga, prenatal vitamins, reading about childbirth. Lily threw a small baby shower in her living room, inviting a handful of friends who stuck by Danielle through the scandal. They gifted onesies, blankets, and a vintage rocking chair that moved Danielle to tears. Yet underneath the celebrations, an unease persisted. Martin's trial loomed, and the outcome was uncertain. If his lawyers found a loophole or if evidence was deemed inadmissible, he could walk free. Danielle dreaded the thought of him returning to the mansion, resuming control of her life. She resolved to fight tooth and nail to ensure that never happened. The first pre-trial hearing arrived on a crisp morning. Danielle, dressed modestly in a maternity outfit, sat in the gallery with Mark by her side. Martin was brought in, wearing a tailored suit that seemed incongruous with the circumstances. His typically confident demeanor was tempered by the gravity of the charges, yet an air of arrogance still clung to him. The prosecutor outlined the case: illegal surveillance, potential money laundering, fraud, and possible extortion. Martin's lawyer proclaimed his client's innocence, labeling the evidence as circumstantial or improperly obtained. As the arguments volleyed back and forth, Danielle's stomach twisted, partly from nerves, partly from the baby's movements. When the judge asked if Martin understood the charges, he stood, voice level. "Yes, Your Honor, but I maintain my innocence. My wife misunderstood my intentions. Everything I did was to protect her." He cast a glance toward Danielle, as if challenging her resolve. She felt a swirl of anger and heartbreak, but refused to look away. At the close of the hearing, the judge denied the defense's motion to dismiss, citing sufficient probable cause. A trial date was set. Though no victory was certain, Danielle allowed herself a small exhale of relief. Martin wouldn't escape consequences easily. In the weeks leading up to the trial, Martin bombarded Danielle with letters from jail, some sweetly pleading, others menacing. He apologized, then accused her of betrayal. He professed love, then threatened legal custody battles over the baby. Danielle's emotions seesawed, but she reminded herself that each letter was merely another manipulation. She confided in Lily, reading segments of Martin's pleas aloud. "He's either delusional or cunning," Lily sighed, handing Danielle a box of tissues. "Don't let him get into your head." Trying to remain objective, Danielle kept every letter, passing copies to Mark. They only reinforced the narrative of control and intimidation that defined her marriage to Martin. One morning, Danielle received a call from Joseph Mendez, the business partner who'd exposed Martin's offshore dealings. She almost didn't answer, suspecting a trap. But his voice on the line sounded sincere. "Miss Kingsley, I want to help you," he said. "Your husband cost me millions. I'm prepared to testify against him, but I also have information that could protect you." When they met in Mark's office, Mendez revealed he had evidence of Martin funneling money into accounts set up in Danielle's name. "He was preparing to frame you if things went south," Mendez explained. "He's done it before, shift blame to someone else to stay clean. This time, I made sure to document everything. I'd rather see him pay for his crimes than let him walk away unscathed." Danielle's blood ran cold at the idea of Martin implicating her in his schemes. She thanked Mendez for sharing the evidence, though her relief mingled with a sense of betrayal so profound it left her nauseated. Despite everything, part of her still remembered the man she fell in love with, the man who once spoke tenderly of building a family. Now it felt like all of it was a lie. As the trial drew near, the prosecution compiled a formidable case. Page's testimony about Martin's instructions for hidden surveillance, Danielle's discovery of the cameras, the recorded admission at the cafe, Mendez's financial records, and the detective's ongoing investigation into Martin's worldwide deals. The narrative coalesced into a damning portrayal, a corrupt millionaire who resorted to unlawful spying and manipulation to protect his criminal empire. Martin's defense scrambled. They attempted to suppress evidence, claiming it was obtained illegally The Wire, or that Danielle had no right to rummage through his locked box violation of privacy. However, the judge allowed the majority of the evidence, citing the circumstances of domestic abuse and personal safety concerns. On the first day of the trial, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Reporters lined the hallways, eager to capture the downfall of a once revered millionaire philanthropist. Danielle tried to block out the cameras and chatter, focusing instead on her resolve. She took the stand, her belly now visibly round, and recounted her experiences, the hidden cameras, Martin's erratic behavior, her confrontation, and the fear that drove her from her home. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she described discovering a camera in their bedroom, filming her in private. She spoke of betrayal, shame, and the terror of being watched. Yet she also spoke with quiet defiance, making it clear that Martin had lost her trust the moment he decided to violate her privacy. Mark, acting as her legal counsel, guided her through the testimony, ensuring the jury felt the weight of her trauma. When Martin took the stand, he tried to appear sympathetic, claiming he acted out of love and desperation. "I was threatened," he insisted. "Men wanted to hurt my family. I had no choice." But under cross-examination, the prosecution tore into the contradictions in his story. They highlighted how some cameras were placed in areas that had nothing to do with exterior threats, like the bedroom closet and bathroom entrance. They presented transcripts of phone calls referencing deals with questionable entities overseas, eviscerating the notion that Martin was a mere victim. After weeks of intense arguments, witness testimonies, and evidence presentations, the closing statements arrived. The prosecution described Martin as a man obsessed with preserving his wealth at any cost, even at the expense of his wife's dignity. The defense painted Martin as a misguided husband, entrapped by dangerous business associates and a vengeful spouse. The jury deliberated for 3 days, the tension palpable. Finally, the verdict: Martin was found guilty of multiple charges, including illegal surveillance, financial fraud, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The hush of the courtroom exploded into gasps and murmurs. Martin's face was ashen as the judge read the sentence: a significant prison term, with restitution ordered for the financial crimes. As he was led away, he managed one last glance at Danielle, a mixture of anger and regret flickering in his eyes. But she refused to look away this time, meeting his gaze head-on. He had reaped the consequences of his actions, and she felt no pity left to give. In the weeks following the trial, Danielle slowly pieced her life back together. She moved into a small, comfortable apartment, deciding she didn't want the ghosts of the mansion haunting her memories. Her divorce from Martin, though still in process, was inevitably heading toward finalization given the criminal convictions. She focused on the baby, decorating a nursery with soft pastels, storing away supplies gifted by caring friends. Lily helped with everything, accompanying her to prenatal classes, building furniture, and offering a listening ear whenever Danielle felt overwhelmed. Page found a new job far from Martin's circles, relieved to be free from his shadow. One balmy evening, Danielle went into labor. Lily rushed her to the hospital, where Danielle brought a healthy baby boy into the world. The moment she held her son, tears of joy streamed down her cheeks. Though the road had been harrowing, culminating in heartbreak, betrayal, and fear, she had arrived at a beautiful new beginning. She named him Michael, symbolizing resilience and hope. Months later, Danielle visited Martin in prison just once, partly for closure and partly so he could see his child. The meeting was brief and emotionally charged. Martin looked haunted, a shadow of his former self. He tried to apologize, but Danielle gently shook her head. "I accept your apology for my own peace, but I'll never forget what you did," she said. Oh, holding Michael close. "He's the only good thing I got out of our marriage, and I'll protect him from ever becoming like you." Martin's face crumpled, tears glistening in his eyes, but Danielle felt only a quiet detachment. She left the facility without looking back, stepping into the bright sunlight where Lily waited with open arms. As they drove away, Danielle glanced at Michael, snug in his car seat, and felt a surge of determination. She had broken free, carving out a life of honesty, safety, and love, something Martin, for all his millions, might never truly understand. And so ends the twisted tale of how one pregnant woman's world shattered, then mended itself stronger than before. Danielle confronted the hidden cameras, exposing the millionaire's darkest secrets, and in doing so reclaimed her autonomy. What began as a story of betrayal and surveillance became a testament to courage and resolve. Danielle's determination ensured her freedom, not just for her own sake, but for the future of her child. In the end, Martin faced the consequences of his deceit, proving that no fortune or influence can shield a person from karma forever. Thank you for watching this dramatic, true-to-life saga. If you found yourself enthralled by the twists and turns, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We have more riveting stories coming your way, stories of resilience, redemption, and the strength that emerges when we confront life's darkest shadows. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories to light. Stay safe and stay inspired. Wealthy millionaire proposes to mistress, but pregnant wife finds out and divorces him on the spot. In the gilded halls of opulence, one secret can unravel everything. Meet Alexander Harrington, a powerful millionaire adored by high society and married to the graceful, pregnant Charlotte. Just when it seems his lavish lifestyle and perfect marriage couldn't be more enviable, a hidden mistress named Rebecca emerges from the shadows. A single glittering diamond ring changes the game forever when he proposes only for Charlotte to learn of his betrayal at the worst possible moment. The fallout is catastrophic, a pregnancy in jeopardy, a reputation on the line, and an unexpected divorce demanded on the spot. This, dear viewers, is a tale of love, lies, and lethal secrets. Alexander Harrington's life was a testimony to the potent mix of ambition, charm, and unyielding determination. Born to middle-class parents in a modest Boston suburb, he learned the value of hard work early on. He once regaled friends with tales of delivering newspapers at dawn, stacking grocery shelves after school, and poring over business books, borrowed from the local library late into the night. By the time he stepped onto the stage at Harvard University, yes, he had managed to earn both a scholarship and part-time jobs to fund his education. He was already nurturing grand visions for his future. Graduating with honors in economics, Alexander wasted no time. He launched Harrington Investments, a hedge fund that struck gold during a boom in technology stocks. By his early 30s, Alexander had built a formidable reputation on Wall Street. Swift, meticulous, and ruthless when necessary, he ensured that every deal benefited him at least triple-fold. Magazines featured him as a rising star in finance. Photographs consistently captured his impeccable suits, hand-tailored Savile Row numbers in subtle shades of charcoal and navy, his sculpted cheekbones, and a disarming yet confident grin. But it was not only wealth that defined him. He possessed a remarkable magnetism, a personal warmth that made others feel secure. Board members, real estate moguls, startup tech entrepreneurs, everyone gravitated toward Alexander. Some claimed it was his calm, measured voice that drew them in. Others swore it was his ability to listen intently and make you feel like the most important person in the room. But behind that charismatic facade was a man unafraid to bend rules for personal advantage. He hid that side well until, of course, everything came undone. The turning point in his personal life arrived at a lavish charity gala organized by the Forbes Foundation in New York City. That night, the city glistened with wealth, black limousines queued along red carpets, and the clinking of champagne glasses mingled with soft jazz music. Alexander spotted Charlotte Middleton across the crowded ballroom. She was conversing politely with a small circle of philanthropists, but appeared somewhat aloof, as if she found the entire spectacle a bit too ostentatious. Tall and poised, Charlotte exuded a quiet elegance. She wore a simple emerald gown that accentuated her auburn hair and bright hazel eyes. Intrigued, Alexander introduced himself. Charlotte turned out to be an upcoming art curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, renowned for her impeccable taste and eye for modern impressionists. She was neither naive about wealth nor blinded by it. She had grown up in a well-educated family in upstate New York, not quite the same economic bracket as Alexander, but enough to be comfortable and well-traveled. She was serious about her work, determined but with a soft spot for genuine connections. They danced that night, a slow, cautious waltz in the midst of swirling couples. By the end of the gala, Alexander had escorted her to her car, feeling a rush of excitement he hadn't felt in years. Over the next few months, he pursued her with a fierce desire. He sent her carefully selected bouquets of lilies and calla lilies, including little notes referencing art pieces she mentioned enjoying. He didn't shower her with lavish gifts, which he easily could have, but thoughtful tokens that demonstrated his commitment and attentiveness. Soon, their romance flourished. Charlotte admired his fierce dedication, his philanthropic undertakings, and the way he interacted with people from all walks of life. Her discerning eye told her that while he was powerful and ambitious, he was also vulnerable beneath the slick veneer, someone who desired real companionship. Alexander, for his part, found in Charlotte a moral compass that anchored him. She was unwaveringly honest, and her convictions challenged him to become a better man. When he proposed to her one sunlit afternoon in Central Park, in front of Bethesda Terrace, she accepted without hesitation. She truly believed she had found a partner for life. Their wedding was a modest affair by Billionaire standards, fewer than 200 guests. A cozy ceremony in the historical Lyman Estate in Waltham, Massachusetts. Still, the guest list was peppered with prominent figures, CEOs of major corporations, hedge fund power players, and even a few celebrities who had become casual acquaintances. The media labeled the event an elegant union of brains and billions. Shortly after, Alexander and Charlotte purchased a stately townhouse in Manhattan's Upper East Side. The property was lavish, boasting 6 floors, a roof garden, and an in-house staff. Yet Charlotte worked diligently to make it feel like a home rather than a showpiece. For a while, things were perfect, or so it seemed. Alexander maintained his scorching pace in the investment world, and Charlotte continued curating groundbreaking art exhibitions at the Met. They supported each other's dreams wholeheartedly, rarely giving ear to rumors about Alexander's potential indiscretions. The power couple's social circle included the likes of Robert Greene, a media mogul known for his flamboyant lifestyle, and Teresa Smith, an influential publicist who curated events for the city's elites. They traveled together, attended fundraising galas, sipped cocktails at newly opened rooftop bars with unobstructed city views, and all seemed sparkling on the surface. But beneath that glamorous veneer lurked small cracks, barely noticeable at first. Alexander frequently found himself having after-hours meetings, plush dinners at exclusive restaurants, and extended business trips that conveniently overlapped with hush-hush events. Charlotte, though suspicious, let it pass, rationalizing that such was the nature of a high-stakes finance career. After all, Alexander was a millionaire in a cutthroat field, and he needed to be present to close deals. Little did she know that soon one such deal would become a ticking time bomb in their marriage. Rebecca Marshall was anything but ordinary. She hailed from a small industrial town in Ohio, a place of rusting factories and battered trucks, overshadowed by financial hardship. Determined not to be trapped by her circumstances, she moved to New York with dreams bigger than the Manhattan skyline. She wanted success, wealth, recognition, the good life she saw glorified in magazines and on social media. By her early 20s, she had worked her way into circles that granted her invitations to exclusive parties and investment summits, often as a glorified companion for older financiers. She had mastered the art of forging acquaintances with influential men. She was undeniably captivating, tall, slender, with raven black hair that curled gracefully at her shoulders. Her style effortlessly blended sophistication and understated boldness. She learned quickly that knowledge was power, while her outward charm was disarming. She was also an avid reader of business journals, well versed in the lingo and developments of the financial world. Men found it a rare combination, someone who would smile and sip champagne, but could also hold her own in a discussion about the Federal Reserve's interest rate policies. Rebecca first noticed Alexander Harrington at a hedge fund conference in Miami. She had accompanied a minor investor named Jacob Turner, who introduced her as his associate. Alexander was the keynote speaker that afternoon. Standing at the podium in a tailored navy suit, he spoke with his trademark calm confidence about market volatility, risk tolerance, and investment strategies. Rebecca observed how the entire room hung on his every word. After the talk, she made her move casually, discreetly, so as not to appear desperate. She caught Alexander's attention by asking him a technical question about emerging markets in Southeast Asia. He seemed pleased by the query, and the conversation drifted into more casual talk about travel, the humid Miami weather, and the best restaurants in the city. Alexander was polite but kept a professional distance, yet Rebecca's intuition told her that a door had cracked open, and she vowed to wedge it wide. In the weeks following the conference, she found ways to intersect his orbit. She discovered that Harrington Investments held monthly networking events. She managed to get her name on the guest list through Jacob Turner's connections. When Alexander saw her at these gatherings, a part of him was flattered. Her sharp intellect, combined with a subtle flirtatiousness, was a refreshing change from the usual sycophants he encountered. They shared banter, discussing everything from global trade wars to philanthropic initiatives. Over time, a comfortable rapport formed between them. But it was at a private event, an exclusive fundraiser for hurricane relief in the Bahamas, where lines blurred. The fundraiser took place at the Cloud Room, a skyscraper venue with glass walls that showcased the entire Manhattan skyline. Alexander had invited Charlotte, but she was unwell that evening, an early sign of her pregnancy fatigue. He attended alone, meeting clients, shaking hands, sealing deals. Rebecca was there, in a figure-hugging black gown, her bright eyes searching the crowd. Late into the evening, amid slow jazz tunes and scarce attendees, they found themselves alone on a terrace with glasses of fine champagne. Rebecca confided in him about her upbringing, how she had clawed her way into these circles by learning every nuance of high society. There was something raw and vulnerable in her story, perhaps carefully curated to appeal to Alexander's sense of empathy. Meanwhile, Alexander found himself oddly entranced. Charlotte's supportive presence at home had always been unwavering, but here stood a woman who embodied a certain daring spirit, an eagerness to manipulate fate rather than wait for it. Their conversation stretched past midnight, and a certain palpable tension crackled in the cool night air. Before leaving, Rebecca kissed him lightly on the cheek and whispered, "We should continue this conversation sometime." That single moment was the catalyst. For days after, Alexander wrestled with guilt, replaying the encounter. He told himself it was harmless, that he'd never truly jeopardize his marriage. But the next time he was in town alone, he did call her. They met for coffee. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a few stolen hours at a boutique hotel, carefully chosen in a quieter part of Soho to avoid paparazzi or acquaintances. So began their clandestine relationship. Under normal circumstances, perhaps it might have stayed a fleeting affair, but something deeper caught hold. Rebecca's ambitions meshed well with Alexander's personality. He liked control. She liked the possibilities that arose from being in close orbit to a powerful man. They were like two predators circling each other, feeding off each other's confidence and drive. He admired her canny insights, how she never apologized for wanting more than she had. She admired his power and saw him as her golden ticket to the top echelons of society. Their secret trysts became more frequent, carefully orchestrated around Alexander's business trips. Rebecca used burner phones to communicate, always discreet, never texting or calling at suspicious times. Alexander lavished her with gifts, designer handbags, diamond earrings, extravagant dinners, though she was clever enough to donate or store them away to avoid raising eyebrows. In public, she remained just another sophisticated business associate he might casually greet. But in private, they built a world of whispered promises and illusions of a future that would prove disastrous. Back at the Harrington townhouse, Charlotte was nursing a suspicion that something was off. She noticed that Alexander's business calls were more frequent, his late-night meetings more mysterious, and his affection at times seemed forced. Still, she chalked it up to the high demands of a competitive industry. All top executives go through these stressful phases, she would remind herself. And perhaps, had it not been for a life-changing revelation, she might have dug deeper into her husband's behavior. But fate had other plans. One crisp morning, Charlotte woke up feeling unusually nauseous and dizzy. She had an exhibition opening that day, an exclusive display of postmodern sculptures from emerging African artists, but she struggled to even sip her tea. Concerned, she decided to see a doctor. A few hours and one blood test later, she was told she was pregnant. The news was both thrilling and terrifying. She had always wanted children, but had been concerned about finding the right time, given her career and Alexander's hectic schedule. She paced the living room that evening, planning how to break the news to her husband. A million emotions coursed through her mind: excitement, anxiety, hope for the future. When Alexander arrived home, exhausted from a work meeting, Charlotte met him at the door. She led him to the sofa and quietly handed him the test results, tears of happiness welling in her eyes. For a moment, Alexander felt the ground shift beneath him. He saw the words "positive pregnancy result" and realized their lives were about to change. A father. That notion had once made him giddy with anticipation when he and Charlotte had discussed starting a family. But now, guilt gnawed at him. How could he be bringing a child into a world where he was lying and cheating on his wife? Nonetheless, his immediate reaction was one of cautious joy. He embraced Charlotte, told her he loved her, that they would handle this together, and that he was proud of her. Charlotte felt the tension in his hug, but she attributed it to the shock of the news. Over the next few days, she was inundated with congratulatory calls from close friends. Teresa Smith, the couple's longtime publicist friend, sent a gorgeous bouquet, Robert Greene invited them to a celebratory dinner, which they politely declined because of Charlotte's fragile state. It seemed everyone in their circle was overjoyed by the news. Alexander tried to distance himself from Rebecca, if only temporarily. The reality of impending fatherhood made him question the affair. He sent her a curt text. "Need some space. Something urgent has come up. We'll call soon." But Rebecca, a master at reading between the lines, sensed something more was going on. She heard whispers in social circles about Charlotte's pregnancy rumors swirling at dinner parties and galas, and her heart hardened. She had banked on Alexander, viewing her as a crucial part of his future, not just a fling. Now, a baby threatened to alter that dynamic. Charlotte, entirely unaware of her husband's double life, immersed herself in the new reality of being an expecting mother. She started reading parenting books, planning how to merge her career with motherhood, and rearranging the townhouse to create a nursery. Alexander joined her on some of these tasks, painting the future child's room a warm cream color, flipping through baby name guides, and even going to prenatal checkups. For fleeting moments, he almost convinced himself that he could bury the affair and turn over a new leaf, become the devoted husband and father Charlotte deserved. But guilt is a stubborn weed. It grows, tangles, and surfaces in unexpected ways. Whenever he saw Charlotte glowing with maternal joy, it reminded him of his deceit. His phone calls to Rebecca remained minimal, but he would occasionally check her social media or texts to reassure himself. She was okay. Whenever he told Charlotte he loved her, a tinge of shame stained the words. As Charlotte's belly started to show, the Harrington family received even more public attention. Tabloids speculated about how the millionaire's heir would inherit a fortune, how the child might grow up among old money and new power alliances. Meanwhile, Charlotte tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy. Despite pregnancy fatigue, she successfully curated a new exhibition focusing on underrepresented women artists. She turned her unborn child into her new source of motivation, bridging her personal joy with her professional passion. But life rarely grants smooth roads to the unsuspecting. Beneath the veneer of baby bliss, a tempest was brewing. Rebecca, emboldened by her ambition and terrified of losing her grip on Alexander, was about to make a move that would shock everyone. Rebecca's patience was wearing thin. She had played her role well, a discreet companion believing that Alexander would eventually realize she was more than just an accessory. Yet now, with Charlotte's pregnancy occupying center stage, she felt sidelined, and it infuriated her. She had clawed her way to this rung of the social ladder. She wasn't about to let go without a fight. She initiated contact again, this time by sending Alexander a cryptic email to his private address. "We need to talk. Urgent." She provided a date, time, and a location, a secluded lounge at the Park Hyatt. Alexander tried ignoring the email at first, but felt a pang of dread. He knew ignoring it would be a mistake. So, on a Wednesday evening, right after dropping Charlotte off at the Met, he told his driver he had a personal matter to attend to. He slipped into the Park Hyatt unnoticed, wearing a casual blazer instead of his usual suit, hoping not to draw attention. The lounge was dimly lit, with plush chairs and an ambient hum of piano music. Rebecca stood by the window, her silhouette highlighted by the city lights. She wore a fitted burgundy dress, her dark hair swept to one side. Alexander approached, his heart pounding. She turned, her expression a mix of anger, hurt, and steely determination. He motioned for them to sit, but she remained standing, arms crossed. "You've been avoiding me," she began, voice trembling with suppressed rage. "I haven't been avoiding you," he lied. "I've been busy with your pregnant wife." She cut him off, narrowing her eyes. "Funny how that never stopped you before. Or was I just your little secret until something better came along?" Her words stung. Alexander tried to remain composed. "Rebecca, You knew my situation from the start. I never promised anything beyond. She slammed her hand on the small table, rattling the glassware. No, you promised me the possibility of more. You said you needed time to figure things out with Charlotte. She inhaled sharply. And now she's pregnant. So, what? Everything changes? Alexander ran a hand through his hair, a sure sign of his anxiety. I'm trying to do the right thing. I have responsibilities. How convenient, Rebecca sneered. Suddenly, you've discovered your moral compass. The tension was suffocating. A couple across the lounge glanced their way, obviously sensing the hostility. Lowering her voice, Rebecca gripped Alexander's hand. Look, I don't want to destroy your life, but I refuse to be cast aside. I've invested in you, in us. He wanted to protest that it was never them, but guilt and some twisted affection held him back. Instead, he tried placating her. We need to keep this discreet. I'm about to become a father. Rebecca leaned in, her tone shifting from anger to quiet threat. If you think you can just walk away and play happy family, think again. I've got emails, texts, photos, and I'm not afraid to use them. Let's be reasonable. You know I'm not some gold-digging nobody. She paused, letting her words linger. I'm done waiting. If you really care about me, I need something more concrete. A commitment. A ring. Alexander felt the weight of her ultimatum like a punch to the gut. Proposing to Rebecca was unthinkable. Yet the fear of a public scandal, especially now, with Charlotte's pregnancy, made his head spin. You want marriage? He croaked out, incredulous. At least an engagement, she demanded. I need to know you're serious. He stared at the floor, his pulse hammering. If he refused outright, she might go public. If he agreed, he'd sink deeper into a web of lies. Rebecca softened her voice, sensing his inner turmoil. I'm not heartless, Alexander, but I have to protect myself. I can't be the second choice. And in that moment, he realized that his carefully orchestrated life was hanging by a thread. Walking away risked everything. So did giving in. But Alexander, for the first time in his life, felt truly trapped. He left the lounge more conflicted than ever, promising Rebecca he'd think about her demands. Charlotte noticed changes in Alexander's demeanor almost immediately. He was distant, lost in thought, and sometimes downright skittish when his phone buzzed. She tried to attribute it to the pressure of business, combined with the stress of impending fatherhood. Yet, late at night, an unshakable anxiety took root in her mind. She found herself scrutinizing him more carefully, how he avoided eye contact when she mentioned the future, how he seemed on edge whenever she answered his phone. One afternoon, she decided to drop by his office unannounced, hoping a spontaneous lunch might alleviate tensions and give them a moment of closeness. She arrived at Harrington Investments around noon. The staff recognized her immediately. Mrs. Harrington was always treated with respect, if not reverence. She glided through the spacious reception area, where a large, modern sculpture of intertwined metal rods reflected the scale of Alexander's ambitions. She took the private elevator up to the executive floor. His personal assistant, Hannah Hastings, looked startled to see Charlotte. Miss S. Harrington, I didn't know you were coming. Is Mr. Harrington expecting you? Charlotte smiled politely. It was meant to be a surprise. Is he in a meeting? Hannah hesitated. He's finishing up with a client. I'll let him know you're here. As Charlotte waited, she heard raised voices coming from Alexander's office. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent, almost desperate. Hannah looked uncomfortable, not wanting to intrude, but Charlotte's curiosity spiked. Eventually, the voices subsided, and the door opened. Out walked Jacob Turner, a face Charlotte recognized from prior investment events. He looked flustered, clutching some documents tightly. He offered Charlotte a brief nod and hurried past. Charlotte stepped into Alexander's office. He was sitting behind his massive glass desk, massaging his temples. He looked surprised, then forced a smile. "Charlotte, what a lovely surprise." "Everything okay?" she asked, her eyes darting around as if looking for clues. He exhaled. Just a difficult negotiation with a partner. Nothing to worry about. They embraced, and for a moment she let the comfort of his arms steady her, but something felt off, like he was holding back. She produced a picnic basket. "I thought we could do lunch together." Alexander's face softened. "That's a great idea. Honestly, I could use a break." They spread out the contents: charcuterie, fresh fruit, an assortment of pastries on a small round table by the window. The office had a panoramic view of Central Park. The greenery and skyline created a postcard-like backdrop, which contrasted sharply with the tension swirling in Alexander's personal life. They chatted about the baby, nursery preparations, and her upcoming exhibit expansions. Yet she sensed he was only half listening. At one point, Charlotte gently touched his arm. "Alexander, if something's bothering you, you can tell me. We're a team, remember?" He looked away, swallowing hard. "It's just business stress. These deals can be draining." She nodded, half convinced. But as she left his office that day, Charlotte felt a gnawing suspicion that there was more to it than just business. Still, she resolved to give him the benefit of the doubt, trusting that fatherhood would bring them closer eventually. Rebecca stood by a floor-to-ceiling mirror in her upscale studio apartment in Midtown. She observed her reflection, flawless makeup, designer dress, and considered the image she projected to the world, a woman of power, or at least someone intimately close to it. But for all the trappings of luxury Alexander had afforded her, she still felt the sting of uncertainty. Her personal phone pinged a message from her cousin, Linda Marshall, who lived back in Ohio. Linda asked if Rebecca might come home for a weekend family gathering. The idea of returning to that gritty environment of dead-end jobs and battered neighborhoods repelled her. She typed a non-committal response, explaining she was incredibly busy, but would try to make time. She hated how fake she felt, but she also knew she couldn't let that old life drag her back. Rebecca set the phone aside and opened her laptop. She reviewed the material she had on Alexander, photos of them at a private villa in the Hamptons, text message screenshots referencing intimate rendezvous, even a couple of love notes he had jotted on hotel stationery. A part of her felt guilty for archiving these tokens like weapons, but survival in a high-stakes game required leverage. She recalled how Jacob Turner had introduced her into these circles. Initially, he had been her ticket in, but once she established her connection with Alexander, she drifted away from Jacob's orbit. He was a stepping stone, nothing more. She had no illusions about romance or loyalty in that arrangement. Her real endgame was security, influence, and the lavish lifestyle she believed she deserved. Deep down, Rebecca was terrified Alexander would ghost her entirely, leaving her with nothing. She wasn't naive. She knew that a man with his resources could bury scandals if he had enough motivation. A hush payment here, a threatened lawsuit there, and suddenly she might find her credibility shattered. This possibility fueled her desperation to secure a more lasting commitment. Grabbing her phone, she contemplated texting him. Their last conversation had ended with his ambivalent promise to think about her demands. She typed a message, then deleted it. Typed again and deleted. Finally, she wrote, "We should talk soon. I want an update on your decision." Hitting send, she stared at the screen, her heart pounding. A million what-ifs churned in her mind. What if he decided to stay with Charlotte fully and bury the affair? What if he tried to pay her off to keep her silence? The thought filled her with disgust and shame, yet part of her rationalized that any large sum could set her up comfortably for life. But money alone wouldn't restore her pride. She wanted to be recognized as someone who had won Alexander Harrington's heart, proof that she had transcended her humble beginnings once and for all. And so the stakes climbed higher, the tension mounting. Alexander's nights became sleepless. He dreaded the possibility that Rebecca would expose him. Equally, he couldn't stomach the idea of continuing the facade indefinitely. He consulted his old friend, Robert Greene, though in a very cryptic manner, never divulging the full truth. He simply said he was in a compromising situation with a woman, and Robert's eyebrows instantly shot up. "Alexander, you have to handle it carefully. These matters can ruin reputations, derail business deals." Robert was a man who had survived multiple scandals, from lawsuits to ugly divorces. He knew the cost of public humiliation. "If you need to hush her up, do it legally and discreetly. I know a couple of crisis managers who can help." Alexander felt uneasy discussing such extremes. He half-joked, "Maybe I should just end it and pray for the best." Robert gave him a long look. Prayer might not suffice if she has evidence. And if the media get hold of this, especially with Charlotte pregnant, it'll be a disaster. That same evening, Alexander sought refuge in a bottle of expensive scotch in his private study at home. Charlotte had already gone to bed, tired from her pregnancy. He stared at the flickering glow of a fireplace, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Rebecca's ultimatum replayed in his mind. She wanted an engagement ring. If he even considered it, how would he hide it from Charlotte? And if Charlotte ever discovered the ring, the heartbreak would be unimaginable. Despite everything, a part of Alexander still cared deeply for Charlotte. He recalled the early days of their relationship, her unwavering faith in him, her moral compass guiding him toward charitable endeavors he otherwise might have neglected. The thought of hurting her was almost unbearable, but reality was relentless. He had made a series of decisions that now cornered him. Finally, in a moment of desperation, he made a fateful decision. He would propose to Rebecca, give her the ring as a temporary measure to keep her silent until the baby arrived. After that, he would attempt to negotiate an exit from the arrangement. Perhaps he'd claim a change of heart, or that fatherhood had shifted his priorities entirely. It was a gamble, a horrific betrayal of Charlotte, but he told himself he had no choice. The next day, he met with a private jeweler, Leonard Dupont, known for crafting custom pieces for the city's elite. Leonard raised an eyebrow at Alexander's odd request, an extravagant engagement ring, but with absolute secrecy. Alexander chose a lavish, pear-shaped diamond, set in rose gold, meticulously designed with a halo of smaller stones. It gleamed with the brilliance of heartbreak waiting to happen. Leonard asked, "Shall I address this to Miss S. Harrington, or?" Alexander forced a smile. "No, I'll pick it up personally. No documentation in my name. We'll keep this off the books with a cash payment." Leonard complied. His line of work often demanded discretion. By the time Alexander left the jewelry showroom, the ring tucked in an inconspicuous black velvet pouch. He felt as though he had just purchased a ticket to his own doom. Rebecca arranged for them to meet at a luxury penthouse rental in Tribeca, a space she had booked for a weekend getaway. In truth, she wanted a private setting that didn't tie her to her own apartment or any place Alexander might be recognized. The penthouse was stunning floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River, a minimalist decor of white leather sofas, abstract artwork, and a glass coffee table that glistened under recessed lighting. Alexander arrived just before sunset, tension radiating through him. He clutched the velvet pouch in his pocket, feeling the weight of the ring like a lead anchor. Rebecca greeted him wearing a teal silk dress, her hair pinned up elegantly, her makeup flawless. She looked every bit the high society partner she aspired to be. She motioned for him to sit at the small dining area, where champagne chilled in a bucket. He obliged, heart hammering. They clinked glasses, forcing a semblance of civility. Rebecca broke the silence. "So, you said you have something to tell me?" Alexander cleared his throat. "Rebecca, this is complicated." But you know that I know you're torn, she interrupted, her voice softening. But I'm glad you're finally doing the right thing. For us, he couldn't bring himself to correct her. Instead, he set his glass down and slowly took the ring out, placing it on the table between them. The diamond sparkled even under the subtle pendant lights. Rebecca's eyes widened, a breath caught in her throat, tears threatening to surface. "Rebecca Marshall," Alexander began, his voice unsteady. "I would you," he paused, swallowing hard. "Will you be mine?" It was a hollow script, words he'd rehearsed without conviction. But to Rebecca, this was her moment of triumph. She didn't question the authenticity of his pledge. She slid the ring onto her finger, tears brimming. "Yes," she whispered, letting out a shaky laugh. She threw her arms around him, hugging him tight. For a fleeting second, guilt overwhelmed him so powerfully he thought he might break down. They spent the evening discussing superficial details about what their future might look like. Rebecca talked about a possible wedding destination she fantasized, about Lake Como in Italy, or perhaps a private estate in the south of France. She seemed to have an entire life story mapped out, brimming with illusions. Alexander merely nodded, occasionally offering half-hearted suggestions. Late into the night, they fell asleep in each other's arms, Rebecca brimming with a twisted sense of victory, Alexander tormented by self-loathing. When morning dawned, the clarity of daylight hit him like a sledgehammer. He left before she awoke, scrawling a note, "I'll be in touch. Need to handle some affairs." Then he slipped away, consumed by dread of what lay ahead. Just when Alexander thought he might have contained the crisis, fate orchestrated a cruel twist. Charlotte's close friend, Teresa Smith, was in charge of public relations for a slew of high-profile clients. She often monitored social media for potential gossip or brand-damaging leaks. Over her morning coffee, she spotted something strange, a post from an anonymous gossip account claiming a famous billionaire fiancé had just proposed to his secret lover. The post included a blurred image of a pear-shaped diamond ring, suspiciously similar to one she'd seen in Alexander's circle. Concerned, Teresa dug deeper, applying her PR instincts. She cross-referenced the diamond ring design with local jewelers known for serving the ultra-rich. One lead pointed to Leonard Dupont's name. Intrigued and worried, she made discreet inquiries. Dupont denied revealing anything to an outsider, but Teresa sensed something was off. That same afternoon, Charlotte was at home, feeling particularly fatigued from her pregnancy. She had dozed off in the living room. Near the phone, Alexander insisted she always keep with her. Suddenly, the landline rang. "Groggy," she answered, without checking the caller ID. "Charlotte?" Teresa's urgent voice crackled. "I need to talk to you in person. It's about Alexander." A jolt of apprehension spread through Charlotte. "Teresa, you're scaring me. What is it?" "I'd rather tell you face to face," Teresa insisted. "I'm coming over now." Within an hour, Teresa arrived, her expression grim. She explained the rumor swirling around social media, showed Charlotte the anonymous gossip post. Charlotte's hand shook as she stared at the image of the ring. "You think that's Alexander?" Teresa hesitated. "I'm not sure, Charlotte, but it's possible. The description says it's a hush-hush proposal, done in secret, and he's definitely in the right circle. Plus, I know how rings from Dupont look, they're distinctive." Charlotte felt her world tilting. She tried to breathe, tried to remain rational, but that's not enough proof. It could be anyone. Teresa nodded. "I agree, but let's check your credit card or bank transactions, anything from Dupont Jewelers." Charlotte, feeling sick to her stomach, pulled up their joint accounts. Nothing indicated a jewelry purchase from Dupont, but Alexander, if he was hiding something, might have used cash or a separate account. Time seemed to crawl as they combed through statements. Finally, Teresa asked, "Does he have a safe or a study here?" "Yes," Charlotte replied, remembering Alexander's locked drawer in his study. While part of Charlotte felt uneasy about violating her husband's privacy, dread compelled her to open the drawer. She knew the combination her birthday. Inside, she found property documents, some confidential investment files, and a single black velvet pouch with DuPont's insignia. Her heart raced as she opened it, only to find it empty, no ring inside. But the presence of the pouch alone confirmed something sinister. Alexander had recently acquired an engagement ring from DuPont. Tears clouded her vision. Teresa reached over, gently rubbing her back. "I'm so sorry, Charlotte. This doesn't look good." Charlotte's mind reeled. Why would Alexander buy an engagement ring if not for her? They were already married. A nauseating wave of betrayal washed over her. She felt the baby move inside her, as if the unborn child was sensing her turmoil. Teresa stayed with Charlotte for hours, trying to comfort her. They discussed possible scenarios. Could Alexander have bought it for a business partner's gift? A philanthropic raffle? But deep down, both knew the truth was more likely an affair. By evening, Charlotte's tears were replaced by a cold resolve. She needed to confront him, find the truth. She called him repeatedly, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She paced the living room, her heart pounding. Finally, near midnight, the door creaked open. Alexander entered, looking tired and distracted. He froze upon seeing Charlotte's tear-stained face and Teresa standing stiffly in the background. "What's going on?" he asked, voice shaky. Charlotte glared at him, brandishing the empty velvet pouch. "You tell me, Alexander, why do you have a DuPont ring pouch hidden in your drawer?" His face went pale. For a moment, he looked like a deer in headlights. Teresa eyed him with contempt. He stammered. "It's not what you think," Charlotte snorted, tears brimming again. "Oh, really?" "Then explain. Because from where I stand, it looks exactly like you're cheating on me, and you bought someone an engagement ring." Alexander, trapped by the weight of his lies, could only sputter half-formed excuses. Finally, the truth tumbled out in fragments. He had been seeing someone else. He felt forced to propose because she threatened to expose him. He wanted to protect Charlotte and the baby, or so he claimed. But each word was like a dagger to Charlotte's heart. By the end of his confession, Charlotte trembled with rage, heartbreak, and betrayal. Teresa stood silently, tears in her own eyes for her friend. Charlotte took a deep breath, then spoke in a voice that brooked no argument. "Get out of this house, Alexander. We're done." He tried to plead, to beg for her forgiveness, but she was unwavering. "You made a fool of me, and you put our child at risk with your deceit. I want a divorce." She ended it then and there, shattering what remained of his carefully crafted world. News travels fast in elite circles. Within hours, rumors spread that Charlotte Harrington had thrown Alexander out of their townhouse. Social media buzzed with speculations. Gossip columns leaped on the story, hinting at an affair with an unnamed woman. Photographers camped outside Harrington Investments and the townhouse, hoping to snap a photo of the estranged spouses. Charlotte stayed indoors, shutting off her phone except for essential calls from her doctor and immediate family. The shock of Alexander's betrayal, combined with pregnancy, was almost too much to bear. Teresa stepped up, acting as a gatekeeper. She instructed the household staff to turn away visitors and reject interviews. Alexander, now holed up in a luxury suite at the Four Seasons, was bombarded with messages. Rebecca demanded to know what was happening. She had caught wind of the scandal from social media and was both terrified and thrilled. She had, in one sense, won. Alexander was now free from Charlotte, but at what cost? The press coverage threatened to smear her name, expose her as the mistress. She confronted him over the phone, panicking about how this might affect her reputation. Meanwhile, Robert Greene reached out, urging Alexander to conduct damage control. "You can't just hide in a hotel, man. The board is concerned about how this will impact the company's image. You need a plan, a public statement, Alexander felt paralyzed. He had lost Charlotte, the woman he truly loved, despite all his missteps. And now, ironically, he was stuck with Rebecca, a woman he wasn't sure he even trusted. On the legal front, Charlotte wasted no time. She contacted an attorney named Hannah Williamson, recommended by Teresa. Hannah was known for championing women's rights in high-stakes divorce cases. During their first meeting, Charlotte could barely keep her composure. She recounted Alexander's infidelity, the ring, the emotional distress. Hannah listened patiently, then explained the steps to initiate divorce proceedings. "You're in a strong position, Charlotte," Hannah reassured. "Given that you're pregnant, the courts will be sympathetic to your situation. Alexander has significant assets, and we can negotiate a favorable settlement. But more importantly, we need to protect you emotionally. This is going to be a fight." Charlotte squared her shoulders, her heartbreak turning into determination. She wanted no illusions of reconciliation. Her only concern now was ensuring the financial security and emotional well-being of her unborn child. Even as she steeled herself, though, she couldn't ignore the gnawing sadness, the heartbreak of losing the man she once believed was her soulmate. She mourned the future they had painted, raising a child in a loving household, traveling to exotic destinations as a family, supporting each other's ambitions. All of that had been obliterated by Alexander's lies. In the days that followed, the tabloids exploded with headlines: "Billionaire Harrington's secret mistress exposed," and "Pregnant wife demands divorce." Paparazzi staked out the Met Museum, hoping to catch Charlotte. A few staff members at Harrington Investments leaked rumors about the tension in the office. Unverified sources claimed that Alexander's personal assistant heard him yelling at a mystery woman on the phone. The scandal was unstoppable, a tidal wave of humiliation. Charlotte braced herself, remembering her unborn child. She rubbed her stomach, whispering that they would be okay, that she would protect them from the storm. Yet, each night, she cried herself to sleep, reliving the betrayal, feeling her heart shatter anew. Rebecca, for her part, found the public scrutiny a double-edged sword. She was secretly relieved that Alexander was no longer tied to Charlotte, but she detested how the media painted her as a cunning homewrecker. Anonymous trolls on social media unleashed vile comments, calling her gold digger, whore, and worse. Some threatened her with harassment. She demanded Alexander do something about it. He tried issuing a carefully worded statement through Robert Greene's PR agency, claiming he took full responsibility for the breakdown of his marriage and asked for privacy. Nowhere did he mention Rebecca's name, though the tabloids already had pictures of her leaving exclusive hotels in the past. The statement did little to quiet the media storm. Harrington Investments took a hit. Investors worried about the founder's scandal overshadowing the company's performance. The board convened an emergency meeting to discuss the possibility of Alexander stepping back temporarily. Furious that his personal life had bled into business, Alexander resisted, but the board insisted on an interim CEO to maintain public confidence. Reluctantly, he agreed. Meanwhile, Charlotte's divorce case progressed swiftly. Hannah Williamson filed in New York courts, citing irreconcilable differences and marital misconduct. In an age of high-profile divorces, this one promised to be especially messy, given the unborn child and the mistress fiasco. The law firm spelled out the demands: a substantial alimony, child support, and significant property settlement. Charlotte tried to avoid being vindictive, but she also recognized that Alexander owed her a sense of security after upending her life. Friends rallied around Charlotte. Teresa practically moved in with her, ensuring she ate well and attended prenatal checkups. The museum staff were discreetly supportive, stepping in to lighten her workload. Even Robert Greene called her privately, apologizing for Alexander's behavior and offering help if she needed it. She thanked him, but declined. In a surprisingly human gesture, Alexander tried to reach out to Charlotte multiple times, leaving voicemails and sending messages that remained unanswered. He wrote lengthy emails, apologizing profusely, begging for a conversation. Charlotte read them, but never responded. She found no solace in his words, only more pain. As the days turned into weeks, the tension escalated. The paparazzi wanted pictures of Charlotte's growing baby bump. They wanted the scoop on whether Alexander and Rebecca would move in together, marry publicly. Rebecca, for all her cunning, was unprepared for this level of vitriol and stalking. She felt trapped, longing for a time when she maneuvered in the shadows without being the center of a scandal. At night, Alexander and Rebecca argued incessantly. She accused him of not standing by her publicly. He accused her of pressuring him into a disastrous proposal. Their relationship became a toxic battleground, each realizing that lust and ambition might not survive the glare of reality. Still, they clung to each other out of desperation, neither wanting to face the consequences alone. Months passed, and the divorce proceedings approached their final stages. Charlotte's baby bump was now very noticeable, and she found solace in the quiet routine of preparing for the child. She purchased essentials, set up a nursery, and even took a few prenatal yoga classes recommended by friends. An underlying strength welled within her, the maternal instinct to protect and nurture life. The tabloids had slowly moved on to other scandals, although occasional updates about the Harrington divorce still appeared. The public, easily bored, found fresh prey. That was a small mercy. Charlotte managed to maintain a semblance of privacy, focusing on her health and the child's well-being. In a sudden turn of events, Harrington Investments made a major announcement. Alexander Harrington would be stepping down as CEO permanently, citing personal reasons. The official press release claimed it was amicable and that he would remain a major shareholder. Insiders knew it was partly forced by the board, who cited irreparable brand damage. For his part, Alexander seemed strangely relieved. He had grown weary of the relentless demands of high finance. He also hoped to salvage some part of his relationship with Charlotte, even if only as co-parents. Rebecca, though momentarily supportive of him, found her illusions of a glamorous future with Alexander waning. Without the shining power seat at Harrington Investments, was he still the golden ticket she had pursued? Their arguments escalated. She urged him to invest in a new venture, to reassert his dominance. He found himself exhausted, unmotivated, and riddled with remorse. The final blow to their relationship came when she demanded they set a wedding date, and he refused. "I can't marry you, Rebecca," he finally admitted, his voice defeated. "Not like this. My life is a disaster. We barely get along, I'm sorry." She slapped him in a final heated exchange, calling him a coward, before storming out of his hotel suite. The next day, she checked out, leaving no forwarding address. The ring stayed on her finger for now, but the hollow promise it represented was laid bare. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks after that. Charlotte secured a generous settlement. Joint custody arrangements would be addressed once the baby was born. Although she agreed to keep a civil line of communication open for the child's sake, she made it clear there was no room for reconciliation. Alexander was allowed to attend prenatal appointments if he wished, but he appeared only once, standing awkwardly in the background while the doctor performed an ultrasound. Charlotte held it together, focusing on the whooshing sound of the baby's heartbeat instead of the tension in the room. When the baby finally arrived, a beautiful girl they named Amelia Charlotte felt a wave of pure, unadulterated joy. She held Amelia close, tears of relief and love streaming down her face. She had survived betrayal, scandal, and heartbreak, yet in her arms was a tiny being who represented hope and new beginnings. Alexander arrived at the hospital, anxious and remorseful. Charlotte allowed him a brief moment to hold Amelia. She watched him cradle the infant, tears glistening in his eyes. She understood that despite everything, he was Amelia's father. A part of her still felt a shred of empathy for the man she once loved. But her boundaries were firm. He would never again have the privilege of her trust. In the following months, Alexander tried to piece his life back together. He started a modest venture capital fund, ironically focusing on ethical tech startups. He rented a smaller townhouse far from the Upper East Side drama. Occasionally he visited Amelia, bringing gifts and attempting to bond with her in short intervals. Charlotte, however, maintained control. She allowed the visits under strict conditions, ensuring Amelia's well-being remained paramount. Rebecca, meanwhile, popped up in society pages now and then, often photographed with other wealthy men. Rumors circulated that she had parted ways with Alexander. Eventually, she sold the diamond ring he'd given her. Some said she used the funds for an extravagant shopping spree in Paris. Others claimed she invested it in a rumored real estate project. Whichever version was true, she had moved on, chasing the dream that first brought her to New York. Charlotte continued her work at the Met, albeit on a less grueling schedule to accommodate her new responsibilities as a mother. She found joy in curating art that celebrated resilience, transformation, and the power of human creativity. She saw reflections of her own journey in those artworks, surviving heartbreak and emerging stronger. And so, life moved on. The scandal became just another footnote in the ever-revolving narrative of high society drama. For Charlotte, the most important chapter was yet to be written, raising Amelia with love, instilling in her a sense of self-worth and honesty that would never be eroded by wealth or power. For Alexander, it was an ongoing lesson in regret, redemption, and the simple truth that betrayal, once wrought, can rarely be undone. In the end, the story of the millionaire proposes to mistress but pregnant wife, finds out and divorces him on the spot, became cautionary fodder for tabloids and a whispered parable among Manhattan's elite. But for those who lived it, Charlotte, Alexander, and even Rebecca, it was a painful, transformative chapter that none would soon forget. From the very first spark of forbidden attraction to the fiery collision of betrayal, Alexander Harrington's tale is a potent reminder that secrets can unravel even the most glittering facade. His affair with Rebecca may have offered momentary thrills, but the cost was devastating: a shattered marriage and the heartbreak of a pregnant wife forced to stand alone. Yet from the ashes, Charlotte rose stronger, determined to secure a better life for herself and her child. In the world of the ultra-wealthy, reputations hang by threads, and a single scandal can scorch an entire empire. Still, redemption often lies in facing one's failures head-on and forging a path toward authenticity and healing. If you found yourself gripped by this story, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life drama fiction that proves truth is often stranger than fiction. Thank you for watching.